My nephews robbed me while I was at work, so I filed charges and sued my own sister to teach them a lesson. When I got home from work, I noticed that my shed door was wide open, and the padlock I normally use to keep it secure had been broken. Inside the shed, I usually stored bags filled with soda cans. I tend to drink a lot of soda, so I had quite a stash built up, and I was planning to cash them in at the bottle drop soon. But the cans weren't the only things missing. I also noticed several gardening tools, a machete, and a gas can were gone. I went straight to check my security cameras. Sure enough, early that morning, right after I'd left for work, I saw my 3 nephews breaking into the shed. They used a hammer to smash the lock and made off with the soda cans and everything else. I immediately called my sister, but she and her husband both denied their kids had anything to do with it. That is, until I showed up at their house with the video footage from my security system. They were furious with their kids, not only for robbing me but also for skipping school to pull it off. I managed to recover the other stolen items, although the gas can had been emptied. Unfortunately, the soda cans had already been cashed in, and I wanted the money for them. My nephews had already spent every cent on video games and junk food. I demanded to know how much money they got from the cans. It was nearly $200. I told my sister she now owed me over $200, including the cost of the broken padlock. That's when things flipped. She and her husband went from scolding their kids to making excuses for them, and then turned their anger on me for asking to be reimbursed. They told me I should be more understanding since they have 3 kids and a mortgage. I replied that they had 2 days to figure out how to pay me back, or I'd report the theft to the police. My nephews have stolen from me before, which is why I installed the cameras in the first place. What my nephews did was absolutely wrong, but I also understand that my sister and her husband are struggling financially, especially after the holidays. Still, they keep blowing up my phone, calling me heartless for giving them an ultimatum when they're already barely making ends meet. I even called them this morning because I didn't want to wait until after they got off work. But not only did they reject every suggestion I made for repaying me, they actually blamed me. They said it was my fault for storing the cans there in the first place, that I tempted my nephews with all that money sitting around. That pushed me over the edge. I told them I was done, and that's when they started spamming my phone all over again. To top it off, my eldest nephew sent me a picture of himself holding a soda can and flipping me off. That was the last straw. I went to the police station, filed a report, and handed over everything: video footage of the break-in, the broken lock, and screenshots of all the text messages. I even gave them the picture my nephew sent me. The officer assured me that charges would be pursued. Maybe some community service will knock some sense into them. I also told the police I was concerned that my nephews had taken the machete, but as I suspected, they classified it as just another tool, especially since they also took other actual tools. Along with the machete, they took gardening shears, a steel rake, 2 shovels, one of which was a folding camping model, a 2-gallon gas can, a cheap used power drill I got for $5, an electric hedge trimmer, and a small used electric chainsaw. They didn't touch the lawnmower, weed whacker, extension cords, or even the old radio I had stored in there. I have no clue why they picked what they did. Maybe they thought they could resell them or something. Thankfully, I got all of it back, except for the gas. No idea what they used it for, but it was old gas anyway. The first time they broke into my shed, they grabbed what they could carry by hand. Then they came back with shopping carts, which I'm guessing were also stolen, and made several trips to take all the cans. They didn't even bother closing the shed door when they were finished. That small act of carelessness said everything. And in that moment I realized I'd had enough. Though my nephews are now in trouble for trespassing, larceny, and harassment, I'm fully expecting my phone to blow up again, either today or tomorrow, once the cops come for those kids. But this is the hill I chose to die on, and I'm standing my ground. At this point, I don't even care if I ever get the money back. They had their chance. I've already replaced the padlock on my shed with a much stronger one, and the machete is no longer being stored there. I also spoke with a few neighbors about what happened. Turns out several of them said soda cans had been going missing from around the neighborhood too. If anyone left a bag of cans out, it would get stolen. I can't say for sure if my nephews were responsible, but if they were, they've probably been at it for months. I've also spoken to other family members, and they're fed up with my sister and Bill too. Thankfully, they're all on my side, which is a relief. I was worried they might turn against me for filing the police report, but instead I've been getting a lot of "good for you" and "it's about damn time those kids faced consequences." Apparently, I'm not the only one in the family who's been stolen from. Some people in the comments suggested I let my nephews work off the $200, but there's no way I'd go for that. Those little punks hate doing any kind of work unless it benefits them directly, and they'd just stand around complaining and acting like victims. They'd need constant supervision too, and that's not something I'm willing to deal with. Besides, they're banned from my property, and for good reason. The stealing started small, snacks and drinks, but escalated to DVDs and video games. That's when I began marking all my cases and discs with permanent markers so I could prove ownership. Even then they'd try the "oh, he let us borrow it" excuse, but I'd always call them out and make them give everything back. Every time they'd act like I was the bad guy for doing it. Their apologies were the most fake, insincere things I'd ever heard. The final straw was when they used a spare hidden key to sneak into my house. They stole 3 six-packs of my favorite blood orange beer from the fridge and raided the kitchen for whatever else they wanted. One of them even took a dump in my bathroom, and not only didn't flush, but deliberately peed on the floor. They claimed it wasn't them, but I knew the truth. I even found the stolen beer stashed in their room. My sister and Bill barely disciplined them and gave me the usual "boys will be boys" garbage. When I told them that neither they nor their kids were welcome in my home again, they actually had the nerve to scold me. That's why I got the cameras installed in the first place. I didn't tell a soul when I put them in, and that turned out to be a smart move. My nephews had no idea they were being watched when they broke into the shed. I must have been their easiest target. Once I can afford it, I'm planning to install more cameras inside the house too. Apparently all 3 boys went from acting like cocky little punks to bawling their eyes out once the cuffs came out. I know this because a neighbor, someone I'm loosely acquainted with who's kind of friendly with my sister, was there and saw it all. Shortly after the arrest, my sister and Bill started blowing up my phone again. They couldn't get the boys out of jail until Monday morning. Now the kids are being charged with larceny, willful destruction of property, vandalism, and harassment. The police are taking the case seriously, especially since there have been complaints about my nephews for a while now. But nothing could be proven until this incident. Over the past few months, soda can bags have been vanishing all over the neighborhood. I don't know for sure if my nephews were behind those thefts too, but they're definitely prime suspects. Now that word of their arrest is spreading, I'm hoping other neighbors with security footage come forward as well. My sister and Bill even had the audacity to show up at my house. I refused to answer the door and told them, through the intercom, that this whole situation was their fault for constantly enabling their kids and refusing to discipline them. That just made them scream louder and pound on my door harder, until I threatened to call the cops again. And since I've already followed through once, they knew I wasn't bluffing, so they finally left. They didn't cause any more trouble in person, but they went right back to blowing up my phone. I didn't block my sister or Bill. I decided instead to save every message they sent me. I've made the decision to take them to small claims court over this. I don't really need or even want the money anymore, and the destroyed padlock has already been replaced with a much stronger one. But the kids aren't the only ones who need to learn a lesson. In the end, I hope I put them in a deep enough hole that they'll think twice before messing with me again. Fortunately, my entire extended family, parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, are on my side. They've all had their own experiences with my nephews stealing from them, and after I banned the boys from my home, some of my relatives did the same. I'm going to push for community service as part of the punishment. Not only is it a reasonable sentence, but I know my nephews will absolutely hate it. They throw fits over doing any task they don't want to do, and always act like the world is out to get them. So nothing ever gets done. A few hundred hours of unpaid labor might finally teach them some discipline. They've been spoiled for way too long. I honestly thought my sister and Bill were going to dig their heels in even further after everything that had happened, but instead, they caved. I filed a lawsuit in small claims court, holding them responsible for their kids' actions. I asked for $500. That covered the value of the stolen cans, the broken lock, the cost of the new and more secure lock, the court filing fee, and a small amount for emotional distress caused by their harassment. A friend of mine whose dad is a lawyer gave me a free consultation and said I had a very strong case. mainly because of the camera footage I had showing my nephews stealing from me, plus the videos of my sister and Bill pounding on my front door, along with all the text messages they sent me. When they were served, my sister and Bill immediately called me, freaking out. They said I couldn't do this to them. I told them this was the cost of failing to parent their kids and letting them grow into entitled little thieves. I ended the call by telling them the next time we speak would either be in court or when they paid me the $500 I was suing for, and then I hung up. Well, last night I had a few friends over. We were just relaxing after work, watching a movie. Nobody felt like gaming. We were all too tired and just wanted to chill. That's when there was a knock at the door. I checked outside and saw my sister and Bill standing there clearly unhappy. I opened the main door but left the screen door closed and asked what they were doing there. They told me they were tired of fighting, admitted they had seriously messed up, and said they just wanted to make peace. My friends were all standing behind me, clearly in view, so there were plenty of witnesses. Bill then slipped an envelope through the screen door. Inside was $500 in $50 bills. He said it came from his personal savings. He told me they were going to make sure my nephews would face consequences for their actions going forward. They didn't ask me to drop the charges, but they did plead with me to go easy on the kids. I told them I was only pushing for community service, which I felt was already a pretty lenient outcome. I said if we all cooperated on that, the judge would probably go along with it. They both sighed and agreed, said they would cooperate, and then left without making a scene. My friends all congratulated me for holding my ground. Later on, more family members did the same. That's when my parents told me something else. Apparently they'd threatened to disown my sister and Bill unless they started making real changes. So now, they finally are. It might be a forced change, but honestly, it's probably the best we're going to get out of them. My mom also went to visit my sister and Bill after they repaid me. She told me my nephews weren't playing any video games. Every gaming-related item in the house had been packed away, including the TV they normally use to game and watch movies. All three boys were holed up in their rooms and were extremely rude and cold toward their grandmother. But my sister insisted they're dealing with the situation. So, yeah, I've officially dropped the lawsuit now that I've been paid what I was owed, but my nephews are still going to court for theft, and they're finally getting the parenting they should have had years ago. I've also been assured that they won't be coming anywhere near my house again. They're restricted to either being at school or at home, and I intend to keep it that way for a long time. My sister and Bill are now forced to step up and actually be parents, something they should have done from the beginning. And thankfully, the rest of the family is on my side, because my nephews had pretty much alienated everyone with their behavior. Yes, I did end up getting more cameras. One is now installed directly above the shed, covering the entire area. I wish I could say my sister Bill and all three nephews had learned from this ordeal, but that's not exactly true, especially not for my eldest nephew, who decided he needed revenge and chose the absolute dumbest way to get it. They each got fewer than 100 hours of community service, mainly because their parents repaid me when we settled out of court. The judge fast-tracked the case. My nephews were assigned to pick up trash and do maintenance work at several local parks. From what I heard, the guy in charge was a retired drill sergeant, so it was anything but fun. My eldest nephew made his contempt for authority very clear. He constantly argued with anyone who told him to do something, and even got into screaming matches. At one point, his dad had to be called over just to make him pick up a rake. He blamed me entirely for his situation. At first, his younger brothers sided with him, but they eventually realized how unhinged and entitled he was acting. They stopped following his lead after it finally sank in that what they did was wrong. Unfortunately, my sister and Bill chose to blame me for the rift in their family. That didn't go over well. No one in the family supported that view. Everyone saw their bad parenting as the real problem. With no one left to point fingers at, they just turned bitter and resentful. Half the family wants nothing to do with them now, and even their own kids are divided. The eldest refuses to change, and it's tearing their household apart. Things escalated to a whole new level when my eldest nephew pulled a stunt so unbelievably stupid, you might think I'm making it up. In the middle of the night, he sneaked out of his house and came to mine armed with two of his dad's claw hammers, one in each hand. First, he attacked the shed. He went straight for the new lock, hammering at it repeatedly. It didn't break, but it got damaged enough that I had to remove it with bolt cutters the next day. He also tore into the shed door, leaving it badly scarred. I woke up to the sound of metal pounding and looked out my bedroom window. I saw someone outside attacking the shed but didn't recognize him at first. He was wearing a creepy-looking mask. As soon as he saw the bedroom lights turn on, he chucked one of the hammers straight through my window. Glass went everywhere. I was barefoot and extremely lucky I didn't step on any of it. Then, he moved to the back door and started bashing it with the other hammer. He shattered the window, broke the doorknob, and gouged into the door itself with the claw end. I genuinely thought the door might give in, so I shouted that the police were already on their way. That was enough to scare him off. My night vision camera caught everything. Even though he wore a mask, he was wearing his school hoodie and a pair of distinctive Nike shoes that his brothers don't own. The hammer he threw through the window had his fingerprints on it. He'd already been fingerprinted during his first arrest, so the match was instant. The second hammer, along with the mask and the clothes he wore during the attack, were found in his room. All of it was taken as evidence. The mask was apparently a Star Wars character called the Grand Inquisitor. This time, when the police showed up to arrest him, his parents didn't try to protect him. They didn't even try to blame me. They just said nothing. They let their son be taken away, screaming. I wasn't there to witness the arrest, but my sister later told me that my eldest nephew kept switching between crying that he didn't do anything wrong and yelling that it was all my fault, that he had to get back at me. He had to undergo a thorough mental evaluation and was diagnosed as potentially bipolar. That doesn't excuse what he did, of course. Later, once the diagnosis was confirmed, he began blaming everything on it, acting like he shouldn't be held accountable at all, as if just getting treatment meant no one should villainize him. Still, he spent a month in juvenile hall. They got him properly medicated, and he pleaded guilty in order to avoid going to trial again. In return, he received additional community service, mandatory counseling, and probation. This time, his dad came over personally and replaced the broken window and the damaged door. He didn't say much to me while doing it, just did the work silently and left. Meanwhile, the two younger nephews continued distancing themselves from their older brother. He never once apologized for what he did to my home. On top of that, he's now repeating a school year because his grades had tanked so badly. His parents are still bitter about that too. In July, the two younger nephews came by my house on their own to apologize. They told me they'd always just followed their older brother's lead, and he made all their reckless behavior seem fun. But the punishments they received made it clear it wasn't worth it. They said they wanted their fun uncle back and asked if we could start over. I told them we could, but they'd have to earn back my trust. They agreed without hesitation. A few months ago, my eldest nephew turned 17, and he basically got nothing, not even a cake. It was part of his punishment, and I imagine he cost his parents over $1,000 in damages over the past year. He led his brothers to steal from me, then went on to destroy my bedroom window and back door. Between my earlier lawsuit and those repairs, the costs really added up. Windows and doors aren't cheap. A month later, my youngest nephew had his birthday and received, among other gifts, a brand new mountain bike. That infuriated my eldest nephew so much that he slashed the tires with a kitchen knife, landing himself in even more trouble. I happen to know a bit about fixing bikes, so I bought new tires and tubes and installed them myself. The bike's fine now, and my youngest nephew thanked me repeatedly for fixing it. After that, my eldest nephew tried to run away. He packed a bag, grabbed his bike, and left a goodbye note blaming both me and his bipolar diagnosis for everything wrong in his life. He said he couldn't wait until he turned 18 to get away from all of us, so he was doing us a favor by leaving early. His parents quickly reported him missing. 3 days later, he came back. No bike, no backpack, and visibly roughed up. He refused to tell anyone what happened. To this day, we still don't know. But as soon as he returned, he immediately went back to blaming me, as if I were responsible for his entire downward spiral. Everyone chewed him out for constantly using me as his scapegoat. I didn't make him steal. I didn't make him attack my house. I didn't make him run away. That was all on him. He nearly ended up back in juvenile hall for violating his probation by disappearing, but somehow he got off easy again. These days, he spends most of his time in his room, unless he's at school, doing chores, or attending his court-ordered counseling. He completed his community service, but his probation will remain in effect until he turns 18. He keeps leaning on the bipolar diagnosis to excuse his behavior, but that doesn't absolve him. Lots of people live with that same condition and never go around wrecking homes or stealing. I've started to rebuild a relationship with my younger nephews, but I don't want anything to do with the eldest. That feeling's mutual, apparently. I've only seen him once in the past few months. He gave me a look filled with more hate than I've ever seen from anyone, and then stomped away without saying a word. He can't paint me as the villain anymore, not without being called out for it, so there's not much left for him to do, except simmer. For the most part, my eldest nephew has completely shut down since school started. I've been told he barely talks, even at school. My other nephews say he's getting laughed at and left out, and while I know that's the consequence of his actions, I honestly don't think that kind of isolation is going to help him improve. My relationship with my sister and Bill is still tense. They know they can't really blame me anymore. It's obvious this all stems from their poor parenting. I've basically forced them to be more involved in their kids' lives, something they should have been doing all along. They constantly complain about being exhausted from work and having to monitor the kids, so every time we talk lately, it's awkward and strained. We don't visit each other's houses anymore, but we still cross paths at my parents' place. Our mom insists we remain civil when we're there, and I've got no issue with that. My two younger nephews have earned back most of their privileges. They've got their TV and video games back. My eldest nephew, however, still isn't allowed on any of that. I've heard he has some kind of electronic entertainment in his room, but I don't know what. Just that he spends most of his time in there unless he's in school or doing chores. At this point, he's not welcome at most family gatherings. My parents told me recently that they don't want to see him on Thanksgiving or Christmas Eve this year because they're sick of his behavior and his constant petty theft. I get it. Even I wouldn't want him in my house, but part of me still feels like that's a harsh decision. My sister and Bill feel the same and have threatened to boycott the holidays if he's not allowed to attend. Personally, I understand why the family made that decision, but I don't think completely isolating him is the solution either. It's going to take a long time and a lot of work for my nephew to rebuild any trust or relationships, if that's even possible. The way things are going, he might just try to run away again once he turns 18, unless the last attempt scared him too much to try it again. I do hope things get better for him. It might be too late to fully reverse his behavior, but I want to believe he has a chance. I may not like him right now, but he's still my nephew, and I do care. Unfortunately, there's not much I can do, so for now, I'm staying out of it, offering support where I can, and hoping time does its job. They started to improve, but then took a nosedive again. Things are more or less okay now, but it took a while to get there. I didn't post sooner because I thought it'd be better to wait. I actually wrote most of this months ago, but decided to give it more time in case things turned around. Then I ended up waiting too long and just completely forgot about it, until recently. So here it is. Hopefully the final update in what has been a long, chaotic mess. If you want the full story, you'll have to read the earlier parts. There's just too much to recap. To start, last Thanksgiving, my sister and Bill went to Bill's parents' house instead of spending it with ours. My eldest nephew didn't behave perfectly there either, but at least he didn't cause any major problems, or so they say. Later, my sister and Bill had a long talk with our parents about how excluding him from family gatherings wasn't helping his mental health, and surprisingly, I backed them on that. Because honestly, at the rate things were going, all the kid would end up feeling was hate and resentment. Our parents eventually agreed and let him come to Christmas Eve. I did buy him a gift because at the end of the day, I wanted to support his mental recovery, not make things worse. In early December, I found a used metallic green mountain bike at a secondhand store. It needed a bit of work, but was a great deal for just $30. I also found out that since his good backpack had been stolen, he'd been using one of his younger brother's old ones. So I picked up another used backpack at the same store for about $5. I fixed up the bike, cleaned the backpack, and presented them to him one Sunday. His reaction was pure shock, like he couldn't believe I would give him anything. It made things a little awkward, but he accepted both gifts with a look that clearly said, "Thank you," even if he didn't say the words aloud. He started using them right away to get to and from school, just like he used to with his old bike and bag. My sister and Bill were honestly shocked that I gave my eldest nephew those gifts, especially considering he'd attacked my house with hammers and lost his bike and backpack after running away. But the gifts had exactly the effect I was hoping for. I was no longer the object of his rage. He had been so desperate to turn me into the villain of his life story, but I wasn't. I never was. The next time I saw him was at the family Christmas Eve gathering. While we were there, my sister and Bill made him formally apologize to me. They loomed over him like shadows the whole time, instructing him to look me in the eye and repeat what they told him. He admitted that none of it was my fault, that he egged me on, stole from me, damaged my property, and that it wouldn't happen again. We shook hands, and he didn't cause any problems that night. Still, his parents didn't let him out of their sight for a second. They may as well have had him on a leash, which made the whole evening awkward. But I understood. They had a lot riding on him being allowed to attend Christmas. Then New Year's came, and everything took a nosedive. My eldest nephew stole a bottle of champagne from his parents and locked himself in the bathroom, chugging the whole thing before anyone could stop him. He'd previously asked for a glass, and was told no because of his age. So he just stole a bottle instead. That's when we found out he'd been stealing alcohol for a while, long before his first arrest. Apparently, he had a secret stash that he'd been slowly draining over time. He even sold some of it to other neighborhood kids. He didn't get in massive trouble for the New Year's incident, just sent to his room. He claimed he did it because he was really craving it, and it was New Year's. His brothers, however, confessed everything to their parents. They showed them where the stash was hidden, in a plastic tub tucked away in the crawl space under the house. When questioned about how they got all the alcohol, the two younger nephews admitted they'd followed their brother's lead. They'd steal just one beer at a time or pour a little hard liquor into empty bottles so it wouldn't be obvious. And then came the worst part. They admitted they'd been sneaking into other people's homes and doing the same thing. Their method? They'd search for unlocked doors and windows. No houses with dogs. They'd bark. The youngest, being the smallest, would climb through a window, then unlock the door to let the others in. They were careful not to take anything big so they could return to the same house more than once. After their arrests last year, they said they realized they didn't enjoy being thieves anymore. They admitted it had always been about following their older brother's lead. Of course, they were punished for not admitting this earlier, and despite trying to keep it quiet, the truth made its way around. It also confirmed some suspicions neighbors had. Considering how skilled they were at sneaking in and out, you'd think they'd have considered security cameras. But maybe they figured old Uncle Yam would never bother installing any. After the truth came out, several of my neighbors, and some of my sisters, installed cameras of their own. As for the punishment, it was relatively minor, especially for the younger two. It didn't change much for the eldest. He was already on probation, and aside from the New Year's champagne, he hadn't tried to steal anything else. Bill started giving him mint gum to chew to manage his cravings. It was the same trick Bill used when cutting back on his own drinking, and it seemed to help a little. He also bought a padlock for the fridge where he keeps alcohol in the garage. He suspects his son tried to break into it once. Things started to look better again, until February. That's when my eldest nephew got into a fight at school. From what I've heard, he didn't throw the first punch. Another kid had been picking on him for a while, and it finally escalated into fists. During the fight, he got his face slammed into a locker, knocking out his two front teeth. There was a reason behind the attack. According to my younger nephews, their older brother had been a bully at school before his arrest. He had a list of students he targeted, usually the smaller, quieter ones. He stole from them, mocked them, and made their lives miserable. Basically, he fit the exact image of a classic school bully. So this fight wasn't random. It was a reckoning. He used to smack other kids around when no one was watching and, more than once, slashed bike tires with a small knife. Eventually, one of his past victims had enough, and it was that kid's older brother who stepped in and retaliated. That boy absolutely wrecked my nephew. Both of his top front teeth were knocked out, and his nose was broken. He had to be rushed to the hospital, and an emergency oral surgeon was called in to save his teeth. They had to wire them back into place using special braces. His nose had to be reset too, and he ended up wearing a neck brace. After that, he didn't want to be seen by anyone. For months, he kept himself completely hidden from the world. No one pressed charges against the other boy. Not that I didn't ask about it. I did, several times. But the other kid's parents paid for at least half of the medical costs through their insurance. That's what my sister and Bill told me anyway. Their own insurance didn't cover much, and the copay was high. They didn't file anything officially because they didn't want another court case, and the other family only offered to help with the costs because they didn't want to be sued. I chipped in a little too. I still had the $500 they gave me after the lawsuit, and I returned it to help ease the burden. I don't know exactly how much it cost to fix my nephew's nose and teeth, but judging by their stress afterward, I'm guessing it wiped out whatever savings they had left. The next time I saw my nephew, his face was a mess. His teeth were wired in place, and he looked completely defeated. He refused to go back to school in person and completed the rest of the year online using a laptop provided by the district. The kid who beat him up only got a 2-week suspension. I won't lie, I was upset by how lightly the school punished him, but deep down, I knew this happened because of how my nephew had treated others. What goes around does eventually come back around. Now it's summer, and my eldest nephew remains mostly a shut-in. He occasionally goes on solo bike rides for an hour or two, but otherwise, he keeps to himself. My sister and Bill have been talking about moving closer to Bill's parents once their son's probation ends. Honestly, I don't blame them. The neighborhood has turned against them. Pretty much everyone knows what happened, and their reputation has taken a hit. They want a fresh start, but it'll probably take them another year or more to afford the move. As for me, I've been spending more time with the 2 younger nephews. They've really turned things around. They're more respectful. They've been welcomed back into my home, and nothing has gone missing. We've been watching movies, playing games, and just enjoying each other's company. They've become good kids again, and I can tell they're genuinely trying to make up for their mistakes. As for my eldest nephew, on the rare occasion I do see him, he's not cold to me anymore. He even brought his bike over for a repair not long ago. He didn't say much. He rarely does these days. He's become almost stoic, quiet. I know that once he turns 18, he plans to leave and start over somewhere far from here. We've suggested trade school, and he's not opposed to the idea. For now, I've been careful not to overstep my role as an uncle. I offer help when I can, but I'm giving him space to figure things out on his own. So, that's it. After everything that's happened, I think this might be the end of the story. I don't know if there's more to say.